It's going to play the intro. Hello, friends. Hello, YouTube family. This is Alex Kier from Van House German Shepherd, and with me today we have a very special guest. Say hello to Alex Vaccaro from Bull Presa. You have probably seen him on Joe's show from NWA Connie Corso, and we're here to very gladly to have him here today on our show. So, for those who are not dual subscribers to Joe's channel and my channel, this broadcast will appear on Joe's channel as well as a dual broadcast to both channels. So the audience for this channel and that channel are not identical. So some of you may see it on this channel, and some of you will see it on Joe's channel, which will simulcast this broadcast. So without further ado, I want you to meet a very special guest, our friend from Canada, Mr. Alex Vaccaro. For the sake of clarity, since we're both named Alex, I'll refer to myself as Alexander, and I'll refer to him as Alex. That way you know who is who. Although I think you can tell us apart, but but I'll refer to myself as Alexander. That way it's easier. So, Alex, please tell the audience a little, because this audience is not the same as Joe's audience. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are, the breed you breed, and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I immigrated to Canada in 1990. I was just a young buck, and in Poland, in Eastern Europe, we had mostly Great Danes. They were completely different than the North American standard. The dogs we had actually had live bites on them. We had them on the construction site. And I immigrated here, and I've always been around dogs, always loved dogs. Originally, I was going to breed, when I was in my early 20s, I was going to breed the American Pit Bull Terrier. Unfortunately, they were outlawed here in the province of Ontario. So that whole thing got put on hold. And eventually in 2016, I got my first Presa Canario, which was a breed that I've always been interested in. And yeah, it's been a journey ever since.
That's very good. For those audience members who don't know, probably from my accent, most of you do know, I was also born in Eastern Europe. I was born in Ukraine when it was part of the Soviet Union at that time. And for those who don't know, Ukraine is bordering Poland, right next to each other. And so I came here in 1976. Before Alex came from Poland, I came from the Soviet Union. And so he speaks Polish and I speak fluent Russian and I speak Ukrainian, so that we have a similar Eastern European background in that regard. So
Yeah.
we share that background. But we're now Americans and or Canadians and respectively, and we now are in the US or Canada, and we're glad to be part of the country now we're living in. So Alex, how do you feel the Presa Canario is different from other Mastiff types? Can you tell the audience who's not familiar with this breed how the Canary Islands or the Presa was developed? What was the original purpose of this breed, and who do you think is the ideal owner of this breed? Some people get dogs they're not qualified to get. So I'm sure you go through a screening process of your buyers before selling them your puppies. Explain a little bit about your breed and who should or shouldn't have this breed in your estimation.
Okay, so what attracted me to the breed first is, I'm not gonna lie, I like square-headed, thick
Powerful
dogs.
dogs. Mhm.
Powerful dogs. Like I said, the Great Danes that we had in Poland, I would say they were probably a quarter thicker a quarter wider and a quarter shorter than the very tall, lanky ones that they have here.
Hmm.
Okay. Of course, as you know from breeding the German Shepherd, everything changes over time,
Yes.
especially when there's various types of show lines involved.
Right.
And, now with, for example, with the German Shepherd, we have the prey monster types, and temperaments change and drives change and so on.
Right.
So I've always been attracted to those type of dogs. I've always liked them. Uh, because of the fact that I grew up in Eastern Europe, I'm very we have a lot of respect in Eastern Europe for the concept of self-defense.
Hmm.
And I remember when I immigrated here, there's some areas in North America you go to and there is no fence. And I found that so strange. I found this so strange. I'm like, these people don't have a fence. How do you live without a fence? In Europe, not only do we have a fence in the backyard, but usually the front of the house is also fenced in. You can't just come to the front door.
Well,
You
you
have,
haven't been in Philly or Newark or South or East Orange. Everything's fenced. I promise you.
I'll tell you, when I immigrated here, like we would be driving through some of the suburbs,
Hmm.
and like the houses are just open. You can go up to the front door and knock on the front door. In Europe, everything is fenced in.
It depends. America is very different culturally and depending upon which part of the country you're in. So you have inner cities
Yeah.
like Camden in South Jersey, like
Okay.
Trenton, which have a very high crime rate.
Mm.
And so the need for a very powerful protection dog would be very applicable to inner cities like Camden, like Trenton, certain parts of Newark, um, certain parts of East Orange. They are known as high crime areas. But then in the suburbs, they're usually people who live in the suburbs are wealthier with a higher income status. And so to buy a house in that area, you have to have more income. And therefore, the people the suburbs attract are of a higher income level, usually a higher educational level. And so the lifestyle in a suburb versus an inner city is very, very different. So your generalization may not apply for every situation in the US. There are many locations in the US. I can only speak of the East Coast. I can't speak of the West Coast. But there are many parts of the US where there is a high crime rate and a need for a very powerful, strong protection breed is very necessary. So I can assure you that the need for a powerful protection oriented breed is not just in Europe, it is also in America.
Okay.
So,
I've
so
only been exposed. I've never been to the States. I've only been exposed to mostly Canada.
mhm,
And here, it is in general not even like a social norm to have the front of the house fenced in, unless you're in an
right,
extremely like a super high-end neighborhood. I'm not talking about like a higher-end suburb. I'm talking about their like where the basketball players live. Those
right.
houses
The
fenced in.
multimillionaires, right? Yeah, we have those at regular. We have those there here too, mostly in Hollywood.
So for me, it was a bit of a culture shock, right?
Right.
Because Canada is not a very we have, I don't call them self-defense laws, I call them anti-self-defense laws here. It's completely different. Gun ownership laws, everything is completely different here. So I was very, kind of taken aback by kind of like how relaxed everything is here. But because I grew up there, I've always had that mentality of having a guardian breed.
Hmm. I understand.
So this is
It
what this is
attracted you. I got you. The
yeah, this
German Shepherd used to be very aggressive in the 50s and 60s, but with the Seeger shows in the 70s, the working lines and show lines were not that different.
mhm.
And so, for those who don't know, this audience is a very broad audience. It's not just the German Shepherd audience, it is an old breed audience. So, I'll take a 5-second side trip about German Shepherds, and then we'll continue on the main topic about today's broadcast. So, let me take a 5-minute side trip. The German Shepherd was divided approximately twice in its breed history. The first time it was divided was in 1945 after the fall of the Nazi Reichstag. and the Red Army and the American Army captured the German capital, and the Berlin fell to the Soviet Red Army. And in 1945, there was East Germany, the Deutsche Democratic Republic, the DDR, and the West Germany, the FRG, the Federal Republic of Germany. In 1961, the Berlin Wall was put up between East and West Germany, and by 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Because there was a physical barrier between East and West Germany, the East German Shepherd, the DDR German Shepherd, became a separate breed subtype, or almost a separate breed. Their big blocky head, heavier bone structure. Um, there was almost no incidence of hip dysplasia. They were bred to guard the wall, and they were bred to be aggressive because they had to do border patrol work, and they were bred to stop of contraband into East Germany, and more importantly, they were bred to stop people crossing into the West. So during the height of the Cold War, a lot of people tried to escape from East Germany to capitalist West Germany, and that was the reason for the breed, to stop fellow Germans with non-lethal force. So the first division of the breed happened in 1945. After the fall of East Germany, a lot of the dogs of East Germany went over to Czechoslovakia. At that time, it was still Czechoslovakia. Now it's Czech Republic and Slovakia. It's two separate countries now. But from World War I until more recently, at about 75 years, Czechoslovakia was one country. It wasn't Czech and Slovakia. Just like Yugoslavia was one country, not seven countries. For those who don't know history, some of you are younger, maybe 30 years old. You may be millennials, so you don't know this stuff. So I'm giving you a little history lesson. Now, in the 1970s and 1980s, we had two brothers named the Martin brothers, Walter Martin and his brother. And one was called the Wienerau kennel and the Arminius kennel. And if you know the dogs like Canto Wienerau, uh, Arminius, Quanto Wienerau, these dogs started the trend of the overly slow back and overroach back in the German Shepherd. The need to do bite work in Schutzhund, which was diminished and watered down. So they still had to do Schutzhund titles, but it was watered down for letting the show lines pass. So in the 70s and 80s, the German Shepherd became divided into show types and working types. And the more time happened, the more they diverged. So there was the West German working type and the West German show type, not to be confused with the American show type, which separated from Germany 80 years ago when our soldier boys left World War II in 1945. From 1945 until 1980, 1990, that's 45 years of no mixing of the blood. Therefore, the genes became separate and the breed standard became separate. So the American show lines are pet quality dogs. West German show lines are the black and red beautiful dogs you see, but they have overangulation in their rear hips, over far reach of the front paw, and they're basically couch potatoes. The need to protect has been bred out of them. So the West German working line and the Czech working line are the last two remaining German Shepherds that are still true to the purpose of the breed, whereas the West German show line and the American show line are able to be handled by most buyers, and they're softer versions of the German Shepherd. So that people think a German Shepherd is a German Shepherd, that's not true. There are 5 subtypes: American show type, West German show type, West German working type, Czech working type, and now it's extinct, the DDR working type. So the German Shepherd is not really one breed anymore, for those who don't know. Anyhow, I diverge. I just wanted to give the audience who may not know that a little history lesson. The purpose of today's video is we're going to discuss a topic that is very important to new breeders. And the topic is, what are some of the pitfalls of breeding ethically? And both Alex and I ran into situations with buyers which were less than ethical. So a lot of people talk about being an ethical breeder and all the burden on us to be an ethical breeder, but we ran effectively into situations where we had unethical buyers, and we ran into such difficulties respectively. So the purpose of today's show is to educate new breeders coming into the business about, first of all, how to be an ethical breeder. So we have to cover that first, and we will both speak about it. And then we will speak about what pitfalls to avoid with a potential buyer, which will cause you heartache and money and many other things. So people think breeding dogs is easy money. They say, well, the top end breeders are making 2,500, 3,000 per puppy. In a large breed like a German Shepherd or Prasa Canario, 10 puppies is not too unusual. People say, aha, 2,500 per puppy. They start counting money like it's already in their hand. 10 puppies is 25,000. And they think it's easy money. The dog's mate, which is no big deal. And the mother does all the work. And I have to do nothing. And I'll just collect 25,000. And if I have three females, I'll make 75,000. And I'll load up on dogs and I'll make easy money. But the reality is that it's not how it works, and it's far from the truth. And so we wanted to expose and do a deep dive on some of the pitfalls of breeding. Now, we're not trying to dissuade you from breeding. If you want to do this as a hobby or a living, we're not trying to tell you not to do it. We're not here to judge you, but we are here to give you advice that may or may not help you. We certainly hope we help you. So the purpose of this video is to educate the younger buyers coming into the industry, dog breeding, what to do, what not to do, how to properly handle contracts, how to properly screen buyers, what types of buyers you're likely to face. And we wanted to take a little time to discuss this together because we both have a lot of combined experience, and we wanted to share that with the audience. So, Alex, from the beginning of this topic, let's talk about first the breeder side of the equation. A lot of buyers are very nice people, and dogs enter their lives, fulfill their lives, and become family companions, and are a big help in their lives because they become almost like surrogate children, and they are become family members, and people love these dogs and rave about these dogs. So not everybody is that good though, but there are many people who are helped by what we do and the service we provide. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, I think the best thing for the new breeder who's entering the industry to think about is, why am I breeding? For passion or for profit? Uh, if you're breeding for profit, there's nothing wrong with that. The pet industry is a very large industry with multi-millions of dollars in this industry between pet supplies, veterinary care, board and train. There's millions of dollars in this industry. The breeding of dogs is less than 4% of all the money out there in the pet industry. So, but it's the breeder who starts off the process, because without puppies being born, there are no veterinary services to sell to the consumer. There's no toys to sell. There's no food to sell. Everything starts off with the breeder. Would you agree with that, Alex?
Yes.
So I would say let's go over the costs of dog breeding. The first cost is the cost of acquiring high quality breeding stock. I acquire my dogs from Europe because I feel they have higher breeding standards. Um, you want dogs in my breed which have OFA hips and elbows done. Any large breed can have hip dysplasia. Now understand this, if it's single hip issue, it is usually environmental. If it's bilateral hip dysplasia, it is usually uh, congenital and is caused by genetic issue. So it's not purely genetic. There's a genetic influence, but if a dog has been jumped or jumped off of a high surface, uh, it is most likely environmental. So now, so one of the things you must look for is a scissor bite in the dog. The dog must allow you to open its mouth to look at its teeth. It cannot be vicious. The dog must allow itself to have its testicles examined by a judge, because if it doesn't, I mean, I know they don't like it. I wouldn't like it either. But that dog has to be allowing that. You want a dog which has the proper anatomical structure, full scissor bite, good temperament that allows itself to be approachable, not necessarily friendly, but approachable. And the dog has to comply to the to the breed standard in size, color, conformation, structure, and temperament. If you're seeing dogs, which if it's a Presa, you're seeing mixed with a Rottweiler, you're not buying a pure breed. If you're buying a German Shepherd mixed with a Malinois, you're not buying a pure breed. If you see a Panda Shepherd, that's not the breed standard. If you see liver or blue color, that's not a proper German Shepherd. Um, Alex, what kind of standard is in the? I'm not an expert on your breed. What are things which are not acceptable in your breed for conformation that you can share with the audience?
Well, the breed is all over the place
Okay.
and issues.
Okay.
So
Can you explain that a little bit?
yeah, so basically, for example, I believe that when it comes to taking your dog to the show, they don't want to see more than 20% white. There's people out there who are breeding Pressas who are like 80% white.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
if it has the dog, it's still a purebred Pressa. And the reason why is because the standard changed. So
Hmm.
sometimes old genetics, there's people who didn't care about the fact that the change. They care about is if the dog works.
Right.
So now we have these type of dogs. And for
Right.
me, I like those dogs
Hmm.
because they're unique looking.
Right.
I don't have any of them, but the thing is, for me personally, if the dog has a good guardian instinct, that's and is healthy, that's the primary example. But
Hmm.
if I don't see every day, like the dog is, 60% white and has some brown in it, I have no problem with that.
Hmm.
So, and there's a lot of people in the presser community who simply just don't care about the fact that somebody wrote some standard and then that this dog is not up to standard.
Hmm. In the German Shepherd community, if you breed working dogs, you don't breed primarily for color. So in the working German Shepherds, you have the following colors. You have bicolor, which is all black except the bottom of the feet, which look like brown socks. You have pure black, which is a recessive, has to be on both sides. You have black and tan. You have sable, which is the most common working German Shepherd. Black and red, which is the K locus, with the reddish color, usually is the German Shepherd show line. So black and tan is the working line. Black and red is usually the show line. And I don't breed based on color. I breed based on performance. And my dogs have to be titled in order to understand what they're capable of. If the dog is cowardly or has weak nerves, I don't breed them. Now,
And that's exactly what happens. So there's a lot of people, they have no concern for color
right.
and they don't care standard. Now this new standard or whatever excludes this dog that's 80% white.
That's a
And
shame.
the dog is healthy and there's nothing wrong with the dog.
Right. I think that's a shame.
But a long time ago, it was okay for this dog until the
Right.
stand and then, so it's very. And this is where a lot of these politics come from and so on.
Hmm. Right. In the German Shepherd, certain colors are definitely not allowed. Liver is not allowed because liver is a color dilution gene of the black gene. Brown is not allowed, like a Labrador Retriever, chocolate lab. That color is not allowed. White is not allowed. There's now a new breed called the Berger Blanc or the Swiss Shepherd, which is really the white German Shepherd. They made it a separate breed. Originally, when Captain Max von Stephanus created the breed, he allowed white because he wanted to attract the sheepdog farmers to give him breeding stock when he was forming the SV, the Vrieschhoferhund in Germany. But later, when he got enough people to sign and got enough memberships, then he said, no, no more white. So that's so the white gene is still in the German Shepherd very much, but it's discouraged. And so they formed a separate breed called the Swiss Shepherd or the Berger Blanc for the white Shepherd. Panda is a color mutation gene. The dog looks kind of like a collie. That's
Mm.
also not allowed. So Stefanitz, in his book, The German Shepherd, written in 1923 or 1925, said, breed for dark colors. Dark colors means hardiness. Now, color is not that important to me. In some breeds, like the Great Dane, they breed the Harlequin color. It's a very pretty color, and they can get more money for the pups based on that color. In the French Bulldog, certain colors are worth 7,000 per puppy, but a regular fawn color puppy is 3,000. But a certain, I don't know that breed, but some colors are worth, from what I hear, 7,000. So some breeders in the cute breed, the small breeds, breed more for color because the dogs are not working dogs. They're just meant to be lab dogs, and so the breeder will breed specific colors purely on market value to make more money. I think that's not ethical because I think when you combine recessive traits to create a certain color, with that comes other problems because traits are not monogenetic, they're polygenetic. For example, in a Dalmatian, which is spotted, they bred for that color, the spots. A lot of them developed problem with the kidneys and kidney disease. And because the development of the kidneys and the spotted coat was connected, so they bred an Irish setter to decrease the inbreeding in that breed to restore the liver problem. So when you're breeding for color, other things are cross-affected, not just color. So people have to be cognizant of the fact, and other breeds who are watching the show, that if you're only buying for color, you're going to get some genetic defects. But when you have a lot of diversity in the breed and a lot of different colors, uh, you're having a healthier gene pool. So
I
that's
said that those breeders are breeding for color. I'm just saying that those dogs still exist, even though the
right.
standard
Right. I'm not talking about your breed. I'm talking about the French bulldogs, where they
are
breed for
still
colors.
from a long time ago that may be 80% white, or they may have black spots on them or whatever.
Right.
And though the standard changed, it doesn't. There's a lot of people who don't care that the
Right.
standard changed, how those dogs are included. And for me,
Right.
point like there was issues in regards to people who were looking at the black pressa and this and that. For me personally, I have no problem with dogs of like this. Like I never was
Right.
into the black pressa. I was never into the politics of the dog,
Right.
you know, of this coat collar and so on. If
Right.
you of the
If the
dog,
dog can work, the dog can work. Right.
the dog is healthy, and
Right.
if they work, and if the dog is stable, that's the
Right.
main.
I
The
agree with you.
the collar is not not really an issue. Now, of course, if you're into a certain type of a look, you know, like some ideally we should have black mask.
Right.
This beautiful mask that runs up to a certain point. Like a lot of people are very really into the mask. I personally do like the mask on a brindle, on a like a nice brindle dog. Obviously, the dog with usually a lot of white is going not going to have this, and
Right.
so on. But some people don't care, and that's okay. The main thing is, is the dog healthy? Does it have the
Right.
type of temperament you're looking for? Is it stable? You don't want a liability.
You want a liability. I agree with you. Just for the people in this audience who may not know this, this is an example that will help the audience. The American
Okay.
Bulldog, a lot of them are white. And the reason they're white is because something called allelic, uh, allelic frequency of recessive genes. So a dominant gene masks the recessive gene. Here's the dominant. The recessive is behind it. It's masking it. In other words, if you remove the dominant, the recessive is visible. Now, if you line breed on certain foundation animals, which start off the breed, because so many dogs were white who started off the American Bulldog, now it's a highly frequently repeating color, not because it's dominant, but because of repeating allelic frequency of a recessive. So the same thing in the Presa. Some of the foundation dogs must have been white, and that's why that color is still there. because the foundation of the breed was based on temperament and color didn't matter. So those genetics, if you rule them out, you're actually weakening the gene pool. And if they do that, they're going to lose a lot of variable, very valuable DNA diversity, and it's going to hurt the breed. So I hope the powers that be do not do that, because they're going to be losing a lot of genetic diversity in the process. The other thing we have to talk about besides the cost of quality breeding stock is when you have large dogs, you have a certain carrying cost to having so many dogs. You must provide veterinary care, housing costs, food costs. I estimate my cost per dog is 500 a month per dog in feed costs, kennel costs, and veterinary costs. Most veterinary expenses are not that frequent. The dogs are healthy, but when the veterinary expense happens, it's quite expensive. So before you breed, the dogs have to be a certain age before you can breed them. Let's say 2 years old. You can't breed too young. It's not ethical, because it's like breeding a teenage child. You don't breed teenagers. You make them adults first, right? So people who breed 1-year-old dogs are simply not ethical. So before you start breeding, you have to consider all your costs. It's a kind of an expensive hobby to have so many dogs, to house them and feed them. What is your experience in the carrying costs of dogs in your yard?
I would say with large dogs, doesn't matter if it's pit, terrier, Rottweiler, kind of core. This, if using a decent food, be there's doesn't matter if it's a Canna, Royal Canin, these type of foods, anything premium. Doesn't matter if you're in the camp of grain or no, whatever. Usually a bag and a per month, and a good bag of dog food right now in Canada is going to run you between 100 and $140. So food
Canadian,
alone, you're looking at 200. Yeah.
yeah, Canadian
So food
dollars.
a month,
Yeah,
right?
I was buying a brand called Inishuk, which is a Canadian brand. They used to do it
It's
for
an
mush
X.
dogs.
Yeah.
The phone is breaking up a little bit. Say it one more time, please. I didn't hear you.
Oh, Inishuk. I know that brand.
You know that brand, yeah. So now it would cost me $60 a bag as a wholesaler, and I would sell it for about 80. Now with the new tariffs between Canada and the U.S. due to our wonderful president, now everything went up 25%, and the cost of importing from Canada to the U.S. that particular brand now costs me $80 a bag, and if you want to sell it, you have to pay $100 to $110 a bag. This is U.S. dollars. So because of the tariffs, anything imported from Canada will go up 25%. So whatever your food costs were, imagine they're now a quarter higher. So yeah, food is expensive, and I recently went to a veterinarian with my girl Lucy. I thought she may have kidney stones because she had some sand in her urine. To do X-rays on her kidneys and her bladder and her entire lower, area of the genital tract, plus blood work, plus X-rays, plus sedation, plus the cost of the office visit. I paid $1,500, and that's and that's one dog. And they told me nothing was wrong, but at least, but it was fifteen hundred
Yeah,
dollars, and that's
hundred
but
dollars, and then emergencies. Your dog can have. It can eat a pebble. It can
yes,
have some sock because it ate a sock or something. You can
right.
have an ACL. Now you're running into $6,000 to $15,000.
Exactly. I was gonna tell a story a little bit later in this video about that very situation. So
So
the ongoing cost of maintaining your dogs, even if you don't breed them, is quite high. And the more dogs you have in
yes,
your breeding program, the more money you have to have. So it's kind of an expensive hobby because you can't breed them
yeah,
until they're at least 2 years old. And if a dog doesn't have good hips, and you've checked it out, then what are you going to do? You have to not breed it. Now you got to spay it and keep it
Mm.
as a pet, and now you got to start all over again with another puppy, or buy an adult dog out of Europe or whatever you're going to get your dog from. So because that dog didn't work out, so now you had 2 years carrying cost for a dog which is not eligible for breeding because the hips don't, are not properly good enough for breeding. You're not going to breed dogs with severely damaged hips, so you're not going to. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. I had a friend of mine. His name is Mr. Izzy. I'm not going to say his last name because that's his private information. He trained my dog for tracking. He had an FH title on many dogs, which is an advanced tracking title. And he bought a dog out of Europe. She arrived out of Hungary, and it was recommended to him by a friend of his named Ty, who recommended a breeder in Hungary, and he sold him a puppy with a damaged hip. It could have been a hairline fracture. He didn't know when it was a puppy. As the dog got older, it started limping very badly with a lot of pain. He takes the dog to the veterinarian. He says, this dog has a damaged hip. He says the vet, is this caused by the dog being jumped or by some kind of an accident, jumping the dog on cement, or is this congenital? The vet says, at this point, I don't know because there's a lot of damage in the cartilage. I don't know. So he calls me up, Alex, what do I do? And he's on Social Security. He's 75. I says, Izzy, what is the cost of surgery? He says, $4,000. I don't have the cash. Should I put the dog down because the dog is suffering? I said, Izzy, it's a puppy. It's only 4.5 months old. You can't put this dog to sleep. Borrow the money from a credit card and fix the hip. He did that. He did surgery. The dog is now fine, runs, jumps, everything normal. But the people who are bargain shopping for puppies, oh, I only want to spend $850 in a puppy, or I only want to spend $300 in a puppy, and they buy puppies off of Craigslist. Well, you buy cheap, you get cheap because the cost of each hip is $4,000 to repair it surgically, and both hips would be $8,000 if it's bilateral hip dysplasia. So that $850 puppy you bought on Craigslist will cost you $8,000 in hip surgery because you got emotionally attached and you'll have to perform hip surgery. So people who bargain shopping for puppies don't realize that an ethical breeder will screen their dogs prior to breeding them. And the cost of not doing it, you're taking a chance. The dog may be fine or could have a severe issue, but then the cost of the repair is on the buyer and not on the seller. So I think people have to understand that the reason puppies cost more from ethical breeders, hobby breeders, is because we do genetic testing and OFA hip and elbow testing to make sure we do proper breeding stock. Now, with respect to what a buyer can do with a dog from Europe, they basically have no recourse. Because what are you going to do? Fly to Europe and sue the seller in Hungary? I mean, the cost of flying there and hiring a lawyer over there, you're not going to do that. So the contract they give you is almost useless. Can you share your experience with buying dogs from overseas and the recourse a buyer may or may not have in buying a dog from Europe, where if there's a problem?
Yeah. So first of all, when you buy a dog from Europe, if there is a problem with the puppy,
Mhm.
let's say you call them now and you say there is a problem,
Mhm.
they can hang up. And what?
Right.
What are you going to do? Take court? You're going to
Or you can,
call a lawyer in Hungary or in Romania and take them to court? It's going to
exactly.
cost you a car here.
That's right.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, let's say they even tell you, okay, no problem. It says in your contract that the dog is warranted for this and that they will replace the puppy, but that they will replace the puppy upon you returning the previously purchased dog. So you're
Hmm.
going to turn around and put the purchased dog on the plane. Like
Hmm.
right now, it's like, I don't know, $1,500 to ship the dog to Europe.
It's more. I'm now buying a puppy from Germany right now. because of the
Yeah,
CDC guideline. You cannot ship until 6 months of age, and at 6 months of age,
that's
it's
for you guys.
heavy. It's heavy, and to Yugoslavia maybe 1,500. I'm getting a puppy from Germany beginning of March. He's coming. Will be my next stud dog. I'm paying 2,500 for the airplane flight alone, plus the cost of the puppy. So
There you
it's
go.
much more. So it's much more.
Yeah, so and that's the other thing is yes, because when I'm thinking 1,500, I'm thinking for a puppy. But the thing is, let's say by the time you discover there's a problem, the dog is going to be a good 6 months to a year. So now
Right.
you're sending
Exactly.
this poor dog. So now you have 2,500.
Right.
How is that dog going to be treated in Europe? Like, what are they going to do there with
Probably
this
not
dog?
well.
You know what I mean? And so basically, those type of warranties to me are useless.
Hmm.
Because basically, if they don't honor the warranty, you can't sue them because they're far
Right.
away.
Right.
If they do warranty, the warranty says you're responsible for giving them the dog. Oh yes, sorry, I forgot. I forgot. Because usually when you read the warranty, it says that the dog will be replaced upon the dog being returned,
Right.
responsible for the return costs, but also you are responsible for the shipping costs of the new dog. So the
Right.
only thing that you're getting for free is
Is the dog.
so now you're gonna have 20 ship back the dog. You're gonna have 1,500 to ship the dog. Now that's $4,000 for the new dog. Oh yes, and usually the replacement puppy, the warranty will say that the replacement puppy
Has
has
no warranty.
100% from any type of warranty. There's no warranty. This is the final sale or business is done.
Correct.
So they don't really going to send you.
That's right.
So now you're at $4,000, and basically this is why sometimes you just look at the situation, you say, I'm just going to go and deal with people in North America,
Right.
and if anything, I'll buy frozen semen from Europe,
Right.
and
I
I'll
did that
take
as
a
well.
chance with that.
Right.
You're better off doing
Right.
than
See, right.
because you're
It's a
just
much
the
less
amount
risk. Right.
is just insane,
I agree.
and they know this, and they
They
know
know
this,
it.
and that's why they do know that you won't do it.
The other problem I've seen in my breed, I don't know if you see it in your breed, is hung papers. This is very
Oh
common
yeah,
in my knowledge. I mean, I'm not all knowledgeable. I'm not God. I only know what I know. But I heard it from a lot of people, and I can share what I know. Is that a lot of the countries of the former Warsaw Pact countries, uh, Hungary, Czechoslovakia. Well, I keep saying Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, Slovakia, uh, sometimes Poland, sometimes Romania, sometimes especially Bosnia or Herzegovina, which used to belong to Yugoslavia, or Macedonia, which used to be part of Yugoslavia. A lot of them will give you a pedigree of a dog, which on paper, oh, you have this champion, this champion, this champion. And it looks like you're buying a dog from the pedigree of a highly credentialed um, parents and grandparents. Every generation is credentialed and up the wazoo. BSP, Bundesprogen champion, it's all of Germany. WUSV champion, world champion, in other words. But the paper is the paper, but the puppy you're getting doesn't match the paper. What the AKC is doing now is they're doing a DNA test of the dog as it arrives, and they want to have the parents of the dog on file in Europe so the DNA can be matched up so that the dog which arrives should match the pedigree of the dog which is claimed to be that dog's parents, right? Well, the problem is that who's responsible for submitting DNA in Europe? The same crooked breeder who is trying to cheat you is the one who's responsible for submitting the DNA. So he'll swab the actual parents, which but those are not in the pedigree, and of course it'll match when it arrives in the site because it was those parents which were swabbed, not the real parents which are in the pedigree, but the actual parents which were the actual parents of the dog. So unless you have a broker you're
Yeah.
dealing with, who you have a hookup, in other words, somebody hooks you up, you have a broker who you trust in Czech Republic or Macedonia, and that person is a trusted person. That person hooks you up, then you're getting the real pedigree. A lot of times you may not. Now that's not true of Western Europe. If you're getting a dog out of Netherlands or France or Germany, this problem doesn't happen. But if you're getting with the former Eastern Bloc countries, it does happen. And I've seen it happen many, many times. The dog is a dud, man. I mean, I'm looking at a dog with a pedigree like champion, champion, champion. You put the dog to track, he has no nose. He doesn't want to stay on the track. He has no instinct to track. Or you put the dog in bite
Mm.
work, he doesn't want, he'd show a rag to see if the dog has prey drive. Dog has no prey drive. I'm like, how does a dog with this pedigree have a zero prey drive? I mean, it's incomprehensible. So you got a fake pedigree. What I did for my friend Izzy that got this dog surgically repaired, what I told him was the following. You have all the x-rays and doctor's notes from the surgery? He says, yes. He says, photocopy them and submit it to the breeder in Europe. And he did this for 4 months. He gave him proof of, he gave him medical reports. He gave him all kinds of proof that the dog came with a bad hip. He ignored him for 4.5 months. I told him, this is what you do. You tell the breeder that if he doesn't give you a replacement puppy, you're going to write a letter to the president of the FCI. For those watching the broadcast who don't know what the FCI is, the FCI is the Frédéric Colomb International. In other words, every country has an AKC. America has an AKC. Canada has a CKC. Russia has the RFK. Netherlands has NHSB. In other words, there's a body registering purebreeds in every country. Every purebreed registry then trees up to the FCI. That's for people who don't know what the FCI is, okay? I told them, you're going to write a letter to the FCI with a proof of all your emails over these last 4 months. And he says, if he doesn't help you, he will never be able to sell another dog again because he will not be allowed to register dogs with the FCI. That got his attention. And he got him a replacement puppy almost immediately. But the puppy he sent him, oh my God, she's a nerve bag. She is so small. She's the size of a puppy. At 2.5 years of age, she's so small. She's not. Can't carry any puppies. She's too small to breed. She's just not able to carry any puppies. She's tiny herself. She has very bad nerves. She shows aggression if you're just standing there, not even looking at her. She backs up behind the handler and goes behind him and shows nerves. He got a replacement puppy, but it's not a quality puppy. It's just weak nerves, poor structure. It's like, what do you do with this dog? It's a crappy dog.
Well, I said they'll send you a replacement puppy. The
Yeah.
question is,
What are you getting?
what is, and what are you going to do about it? They've already
Nothing.
sent it to you. You took
Right.
it. Can't
Right.
do nothing. Now you can't
Right.
even call the because what are you going to tell the FCI? I had this dog. They sent me a new one. The dog didn't turn out.
Right.
But
They did contractually what they promised you under tremendous pressure because you threatened them to write a letter to the president of the FCI. That's how he got a
yeah,
replacement puppy after 4.5 months of correspondence. Okay. And this dog had to be lying in a crate to limit its physical activity until the hip healed or the hip would have recracked. Okay. So
yeah,
the dog had to be very limited. It had to be partially sedated because the hip was so badly damaged that the vet said you have to keep her sedated somewhat so not to make the hip move while it's healing. So he kept the
yeah.
original dog under sedation, having no life except to pee and to poop and to be fed, but that's not a life for a dog. And then the replacement dog has such a weak nerves and such bad temperament, you can't train it, you can't do anything with it. So what did he get out of the bargain? Nothing. So I
Nothing.
hesitate to share to regular people that if you want a dog out of Europe, deal with a very reputable breeder or deal with a very reputable broker. You pay a broker fee in addition to the cost of the puppy, in addition to the cost of shipping. Expect to spend over $5,000, $5,600 for a puppy, not a proven dog. So expect to spend big to get an import from Europe unless you have a hookup, which will give you the right kind of dog from an ethical person. But expect to spend heavy. That's what I can share with this audience. So the goal of this topic is there's a lot of costs involved in importing dogs, and there's a lot of costs involved in health testing dogs. In my area, OFA hip x-rays, I live near New York City, is $700 per x-ray, including hips and elbows. You can't just do hips, you have to do elbows. And there's a $200 sedation cost to get the dog asleep so it can be leg can be pulled up so that it can be maneuvered into the right position to take the x-ray right. In other parts of the country, like in Pennsylvania, which is a sister state next to New Jersey, you might pay less. But the bottom line is, if you're in my area, that's the cost, $900 to do oil for hip x-rays. In bark testing against degenerative myelopathy or Willebrand's disease or Cushing's disease, that costs a
Mm,
150 for the first dog or an 100 for every subsequent dog. So
mm,
you just spend 150 for embark and you spend 900 on OFA hip x-rays. You just spend 1,050 per dog. 3 breeding females, that's $3,150. So people who think breeding dogs is inexpensive, it is actually very expensive to do it right. What is your experience in this situation, Alex?
Well, first of all, when you import a dog, you're importing a puppy. You don't know what you're going to be getting.
Right.
And if you're a working line person, you're going to have an issue
Right.
because the dog has to, if you're looking in to compete in,
Schutzen, IGP, yeah.
yeah, IPG now,
PSA,
or anything, then if the dog is too, soft or
too
locked,
timid.
all these timid, you're going to have a problem.
Right.
Then, if you're a show breeder and the dog is, this is a very broad term, it's kind of used, I think it's overused, but too hot. Okay. As you said, some dogs, some of these working line German Shepherds cannot be handled by most people, but most show line German Shepherds can be handled by most people. So in
Right.
this case, for this dog, and it just so happens that it's mostly show line, but somehow those old genetics from the 1980s or whatever came in.
Right.
It happens.
Yeah.
And now,
You have a throwback sometimes.
yeah, you get a throwback, and now you
Yeah.
have a. What are you gonna do now? Now the dog is hot. Now you can breed, but down is a sin because downgrading is the term. Like what happens is you have a dog and the dog is too much. So
Hmm.
this is what people think. Okay, people think I'm gonna take this dog that's too much and I'm going to breed to this like more chill of a dog.
Hmm.
And then
You
when
get
I'm
the best of both worlds. No, you don't.
here and I'm gonna get this.
Right.
That's not how it works.
Right.
You want to go from here to here and get this. You got to take this and you got to breed it for 10 generations in
Right.
line breeding, sometimes
Right.
out crossing only with that, and then
Right.
maybe get something. Like,
Right.
for example, a golden retriever or retrievers, they
Right.
have soft mouth. That is
Right.
genetic. I was just listening to a podcast from a man who breeds German Shepherds, and he says that when he outcrosses, he looks at the outcross, and the first thing he looks is if his line has a strong bite,
Hmm.
because the bite you can it's very similar to a natural puncher.
Right.
In
It's
yes,
genetic. You're right. It is
everybody,
genetic.
everybody hits the pads, everybody hits the heavy bag, but either you're a natural puncher or you're not. We
That's
can
right.
foster it in you. So
Right.
think bite is genetic and then you foster it, and it's a lot easier to have it and foster it than to try to develop on a dog that doesn't have it. It's like if a dog doesn't have a prey drive, you're not going to make him have prey drive. Maybe you can make
Right.
some interest, but not,
You cannot change what's not there. Right.
yeah.
Right. If I cannot sing, I cannot sing. Right. I like music, but I can't sing. You can't install a drive which is not there in the first place. It has to be there
So
in order to improve upon it and pull it into the forefront. But it has to be there. You can't install it.
Yeah. So basically, in regards to downbreeding, what happens is we have this dog here. It's too hot. So we'll have this dog here and we'll kind of bring it down to the middle. And what ends
Hmm.
up, you end up with the dog here, with a dog here, with a temperament here, with a temperament there. Your litter is now all over the place.
Correct.
Where if you would have just taken the hot dog and bred it to the hot dog, and now you can just send it to the people
Who can handle that?
say that the both parents are of they're very territorial. They
Right.
don't like strangers. They're for immediate family only. Or you can say we
Right.
took this dog that's it's a German Shepherd, but it looks like a German Shepherd, but it acts like a golden retriever, and both dam and sire are the same, and their grandparents are the same, and that's great because there's people who want a German Shepherd who behaves like a golden retriever, and
Unfortunately, the most. That's what they mostly want. That's right.
that's what it is. And we can sit here and play politics, but there's no point. We're not going to change anything. That's the way it
Right.
is. So there's no such a thing as we're going to take this here and then put it together and meet in the middle. That's not how
Right.
genetics.
That's not how genetics works, right? I can tell you that in the German Shepherds, some people have crossed West German show lines with West German working lines, hoping to get something in the middle. They wanted a dog that would be not as hot as a working line, but
Hmm.
more attractive than the working line. Personally, I think working lines are very attractive because their body's built for work, but
Hmm.
everybody has their own taste, right? So they think they're going to get something in between both worlds. What they get is neither world. It cannot be shown in the show ring because it will not pass the Seeger show standard because they're looking for their type that they consider the right structure, which I don't consider the right structure, but that's the look that they want. They call it very sh- showy. That's what they call it. Uh, they call it very. There's a phrase for it. They call it very. I forgot that word, but they're using that to describe this caricature. They call it German Shepherd. So the dog is not really a show dog. It doesn't fit that standard, but it's not really a working dog because it has drive from one working parent, but it has the nerves of the other parent. So you have a lot of drive, but not enough nerve strength to contain that drive. So you wind up with a nerve bag. You have a dog with a lot of drive, but without the nerves to control that drive. So you
Hmm.
don't wind up with a dog in the middle. You wind up with a dog which is it's very difficult to find such a dog at home. It's not a working dog. It doesn't have enough drive, or it has drive, but it doesn't have enough nerve to hold that drive in, and it
Yeah,
has low thresholds and low triggers, and it's in a hair trigger for aggression.
that's
So
a
either
very
one,
that's a very big problem. That's like dealing with a person who gets easily offended and then lashes out. Those are dangerous people.
right? Like Joe Pesci in that movie Goodfellas.
Yes,
You
yes.
have a Napoleon complex. The guy is short
Yep.
with a bad temper and a very low threshold, but he had a gun.
Yeah.
So if he was not armed, he would be you ignore him. But because he can hurt you because he has a pistol, that guy who is easily offended with a low threshold can kill you. So the
And
same thing with dogs with low thresholds. When you're breeding dogs for a certain sport or to be protection dogs, not only you want the dog to have drive, but you want the dog to be balanced, not just have drive. If the dog is a German Shepherd, you're looking for a balanced dog, 50% defense, 50% prey, 50-50, not all prey like a Malinois and very little defense. That dog will work for itself for drive satisfaction. I've seen dogs redirect against the handler because it can't get the bite and get drive satisfaction. It redirects against its own owner.
hmm,
Those dogs are not worth keeping.
mm-mm.
But a lot of people breed dogs like that. They're prey monsters, and that's not the right German Shepherd. So you're 100% right. Breeding down is worse than breeding up because you can grade up, but you should never grade down. And
Yeah,
breeding aggression out of a dog is extremely difficult. You really have a hard time breeding aggression out of a dog.
you can do it. Yeah.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
So it's better
No.
not to breed such dogs in the first place.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah,
breed
right,
that. And so the other thing that will happen is people may end up buying a dog from that litter,
right.
and the dog is just it just happened that it's what they wanted to create. It's in that middle.
But that's one puppy out of 10, maybe.
And they say, oh my, and then people in that neighborhood or their relatives are like, oh my goodness, you got this kind of Corso, you got this German Shepherd, this dog is wonderful, it's like a golden retriever trapped in this square-headed body, it's a gentle giant. I can't stand that term. I can't stand that term, gentle giant. It's the gentle giant, and they breed it, okay, to another gentle giant that comes from
And the
downbreed.
genetics now suck because you got rid of all the good traits.
And next thing you know, we just had a child killed in my province by two cane corsos.
Terrible.
We just a child killed in our province by two cane corsos. This isn't a joke.
Right.
Joe Pesci had a gun. These
That's
dogs
right.
have teeth.
Right. And a lot of power.
These are your arteries. You know how easy it is to bleed out from this?
I know.
This isn't a
Exactly.
joke. And
That's
you
right.
get these dogs, golden retrievers, okay? But they're
That's the
not
problem with
golden
these.
retrievers.
That's the problem with these fur mommies. See, these fur mommies are treating every dog as any dog will do. It's all on how you raise them. No, it's not how you raise them. The 150 years of genetics are not easily erased overnight. If you have dogs which were originally bred to fight other dogs, that's in them. That's gameness is in them. If you were have dogs which are meant to herd sheep, they genetically want to herd sheep, like the border collie. It stares down the sheep like it's a wolf, and the sheep backs up. That instinct is still there. Whether you put it in an apartment building and want it to watch TV, it's genetically
Yeah,
wired to herd sheep. It wants to herd sheep. It might nip at your toe, at your heels, because it wants to control you and herd you, because it has a genetic need to herd. You can't overcome hundreds and hundreds of years of genetics. Oh, it's all how you raise them, or they're fur children. They're not fur children, they're dogs. Don't anthropomorphize them. They're dogs. Also, in Western Europe, everything is becoming softer. The stick hits and IGP are now disallowed. Now, what the stick hit did was it's a rubber stick, it doesn't hurt. I did it on myself, it doesn't hurt. It was the dog is on a sleeve and the man is running down the field, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and the fifth swing, the dog is hit. Now, if the dog bites harder, the dog is in the fight because a real criminal will fight back. But if a dog is weak, he'll loosen his grip,
or
and
redirect.
the quality of the grip is now judged based on the fact that there's no stick hits. So now weaker dogs will pass, which normally wouldn't have passed. So they want to outlaw all bite sports. They want to outlaw all combat sports. Society is becoming soft. And back in the, forget about a long time ago, in my grandmother's generation, you had a percher on horse, it tilled the soil. And if that horse didn't work and tilled the soil, the farmer couldn't plant the crops and the family starved. So having a breed of horse for that job that it was bred for and could do the job it was bred for was important for man's survival. Or if you have an Arabian stallion bred for speed, you're not going to hook up an Arabian stallion to be a plow horse. And you're not going to hook up a plow horse to become a race horse. They're completely different purposes, horses. The same thing is true in dogs. You must breed for a purpose, and that purpose is genetic at that point. So it's not, people seem to think that all dogs are meant to be pets. No, not all dogs are meant to be pets. Some dogs are just purely working animals and not pets. So I don't understand people. How do you screen buyers, Alex, to know that the dog um, you're selling them will be a fit for their lifestyle? What's your approach?
I have many approaches.
Okay.
I talk to them, I see their reaction. I'll give you an example. I spoke to one guy. I said, okay, so you live in the city. How active, how active are you? Do you have a property? How often are you out? How often will you be out with the dog? I didn't know if the guy was in an apartment building or in a household,
Right.
so I asked a question. The guy met me. And this is what he says to me. No, I don't have a property, but I have legs and I can walk. And I'm like, attitude, done.
Yeah.
Just from that, I was like, no, man, you have, like, no, I'm not selling you a pressa.
No, I have a questionnaire I send buyers, which where they
Done.
live.
Yeah.
I had a person call me who is a tenant in an apartment building, wants to buy a working line German Shepherd, and says, "Well, my lease doesn't allow dogs." I mean, why are you calling me? I'm not going
Yeah.
to sell you a dog. Your lease doesn't allow dogs. What do you think? I'm going to sell you a dog? I mean, don't you have any common sense? You're calling a breeder, telling them your landlord doesn't allow dogs. Do you think I'm going to sell you a dog? It's
But
like,
see, the issue is this: the issue of living in the city or in the apartment building is this. If your German Shepherd is stable,
right,
not show, can be a working line, it can be a dog that doesn't particularly like strangers, a one person type of a dog, but stable with proper training. The dog should
right,
sit there, do
right.
nothing
You
when,
be neutral, right?
okay? Well, I'll guarantee you that I don't know your dogs, but I know you have working line dogs. I guarantee you I can get the dog to sit there and ignore everybody going in and out of the elevator.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
But here's the problem. In comes fur baby mommy with her
Right,
7 pound chew.
right,
And I've lived in the big city. I haven't always lived in the middle of nowhere. I lived in the big city.
right.
And what you'll see in the city is, and this is something I hate, just talking about this makes my blood boil. I hate the retractable leash.
Yeah, I do too. They're completely
Pies.
useless.
And this is what happens. They hit the elevator button. The elevator button opens. The elevator opens. You haven't even exited the elevator, okay? And the dog is already inside the elevator on the retractable leash, and the owner is nowhere to be found.
And no
And now,
control either.
now this Chihuahua is growling at your German Shepherd. Now what?
Now your German Shepherd, because he's big, is the bad guy.
And now your dog do something or doesn't do something, or even your dog didn't do something, but just like keep the dog away. Oh, hello. Yes, I was in an elevator. This man was aggressive with me. I want to file complaint. You know how it is these days.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a bunch of Karens. Yeah,
Say
I
anything.
agree with you.
That's
I
why
lived
our
in an
society.
apartment building in '89. My first dog was not a German Shepherd. It was a German Shepherd Collie mix. I got him from an animal shelter. I saved his life. His name was Lasker. This dog, I was walking down the street and it was late at night. I came from a Broadway play. I was wearing a white three-piece suit, like Ricardo Montalban, uh, Fantasy Island. Back then, that was popular. Those kind of suits. But so I didn't have a chance to change. I just ran downstairs. We were living on the 19th floor, and I ran down the steps. I took him for a walk. All of a sudden, three guys start following me, and it's 12 midnight. We came from a Broadway play. It was 12 midnight, and I'm walking faster, and they're walking faster, and I'm walking faster, and they're walking faster. All of a sudden, the guy on the right runs in front to my side and cuts me off in front and puts a knife to my throat and is about to say your money or your life, while the two guys behind me grab me by the arms. So it's a 3-on-1 attack. This dog uncoils. He goes, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," and he grabs the man by the arm, pushes him down by punching him in his chest, and starts barking at him. He's about to rip his throat off. I had to pull him off because if he went for the jugular, he would take out his esophagus and he would kill him. So he came very close to killing him. The other two saw it. They were booking it, man. They were running like, this dog saved my life. If it wasn't for this dog, I would not be alive today talking to you right now.
Yeah.
But in the building he lived in, he was the sweetest. He was a pussycat. But we had a
Yeah.
bunch of Karens. This dog is aggressive. This dog is this. He didn't touch anybody. He didn't bark at anybody. He didn't do
Yeah.
anything to anybody. And they were complaining left and right about this dog, and he didn't do anything to anybody.
Oh, I had a
So,
situation. I was young, young, young,
right,
young. I'm talking
right,
like 97. I had my first pit bull. This is before they made them illegal. And I
right.
lived back in the day. I mean, I was what, like 17. I was 17, 18. I was just in college, still living at home. And,
Mhm.
you know, there was a petition
Yes,
to get my pit bull out of the building.
Same thing happened to
Uh,
my Shepherd Collie mix. A petition was signed.
they had a petition, but nothing
Yeah, same
happened.
thing happened. Right,
It ended up living. I mean, it died in my arms in 2008. Everything was
right,
fine, but we had to deal with that petition. I just wonder, and I told the guy, I said, my dog is not going anywhere. It didn't do anything. And to make sure it doesn't do anything, I'm going to turn around and put a muzzle on the dog when the dog is inside the building. So I basically cut them off. But
right.
not every my personality. And today, you can't say anything to anyone because you tell somebody, "Can you move your dog away?" Oh, you're being rude. Your tone of voice was aggressive. I'm triggered. I'm filing a complaint. That's why our society is becoming more and more stupid. Our
I agree.
society is more
People
stupid,
used to be more direct, and it was healthier.
and this whole thing, like this whole the whole thing, that whole softness. The whole softness, the way we approach dog, that positive reinforcement only dog training, what's happening in
Right,
dogs,
which is crap. Yeah, like
any
Zach George.
dogs
Yeah,
doing all this stuff. But even that, going into our approach to each other, can't say anything to anyone. The E4 effort, E4 entitlement education system where kids don't fail. All of this is a political ideation that comes from the old left. And unfortunately, that's where our society went. Maybe it's going to swing back, maybe it won't. But I'll tell you right
I
now,
don't know if it's left or right. I think it's where society is right now. But I'll tell you a story.
you
My
know what?
grandmother, may God rest her soul, she was born in Romania. And
Mm,
for those who don't know history, Romania was on the Axis during World War II. So Italy was a fascist country, so was Romania. And for those who don't know who Romania is, here's Hungary, here's Romania, and here's Ukraine. The part of Romania that was annexed uh, by the Soviet Red Army became the Republic of Moldova. So
mhm.
Moldovans speak Romanian, and it became the Moldovan SSSR. My grandmother went to Kazakhstan under Stalin's orders during World War II because the Jews were trying to be saved by Stalin as the German armies were advancing. So Stalin sent large amounts of Jewish people to Kazakhstan, Central Asia, for those who don't know where that is. If you don't know where Kazakhstan is, look up where Afghanistan is, and Kazakhstan is above it. Okay. Anyhow, so it was a Muslim-based Soviet republic at that time. She comes back in 1918 after the war was over to her village. The buildings are burned to the ground. The Her brothers and sisters are all dead, except one brother, Victor, who comes back from the front wounded with shrapnel from his stomach and machine gun shrapnel. There's nothing to eat. All the animals are dead. Only you can eat is horse meat, and you're lucky to get it. And she's speaking Romanian, the language of the enemy, and her village is occupied by Soviet forces, which speak Russian and Ukrainian. So she's speaking the language of the enemy, which was on the side of Nazi Germany.
Mm.
Now, imagine living in that time and surviving. She was 18 in 1945, and having to do what she had to do to feed herself, feed her brother who was wounded, came back from the front. My father's two brothers died fighting the Germans. And imagine living in 1945, people starving, starving. The
Yeah.
buildings are bombed to the ground. There's nothing on the ground. And
Mm.
imagine what kind of person you have to be to live in that time and survive. Compare that to now. I'm 18-year-old now. All they know how to do is play video games, chat through text messaging. They don't even talk on the phone, they text. And they don't know hardship. So people have gotten so soft. Now,
Yeah.
compare 1945 18-year-old, my grandmother, and today's 18-year-old. There is night and day difference. So I'm saying society has gotten so soft because people are not facing any real hardship, not starvation, not fear of being killed,
Yeah.
because people were being killed by mortar, by mines, by machine gun fire. People were being killed. So the 18-year-old that lived in 1945 is not the 18-year-old of today. And I think that because society has gotten so soft and because the society has gotten so uh, the outcome of what your behavior is irrelevant to any real consequences or any real results. And I
Yeah.
don't think it's left or right. I think society's just gotten soft. And
It's what you're saying, that there's no consequence. In Canada,
there's
we
no
have
consequences. That's the problem.
something we call the revolving bail system. There's
Hmm.
people, they do carjacking. They get
Hmm.
caught, they're out on bail. Next day they're doing carjacking. Next day,
Wow.
it's impossible to end up being held in custody, and it's just a
Right.
revolt. Car theft
Yeah,
here.
it's a justice system which is not punishing criminals. I agree with you.
Speaking of car, like guard dogs, there's people who do protection, do carjacking scenarios. The
Right.
carjacking rate in Canada is atrocious. It's to the point where people are afraid to go out and buy a forerunner because it's pretty much you're gonna get carjacked.
Wow.
People are just gonna be like, I'll just drive a Dodge minivan or something because at least I'm not gonna get carjacked. It's
It's
just,
boring. It's boring, right? I get it.
you
Uh,
know,
yeah. Getting back to the responsible breeding, um, I think what we have to cover. So let's recap what we've covered. What we've covered is there's a cost to maintaining your dog's health in feeding and veterinary care. There's a cost of importing dogs, which is not cheap. There's a cost of housing and feeding your dogs as an ongoing cost. And there is the cost of embark testing your dogs and OFA hip and elbow x-rays for your dogs. All these expenses are part of the carrying costs and before you made a single penny. Now you have to consider the cost of a stud fee. You have to
mm-hmm.
consider the cost of emergency C-section and the cost of whelping supplies. In my area, a scheduled C-section is $3,000 and an emergency C-section is $6,000. Even a large breed like a German Shepherd or a Prusset Canario may not likely to need a C-section, but a puppy might be in breech position and has to be turned around, or the whole litter could die and the mother could die. So I would say the prospective breeder has to have 6,000 in cash for that eventuality. And if you have no cash and you're going into breeding without any cash whatsoever, I think that you're not playing uh, by any rules that you shouldn't breed dogs if you don't have any startup cash. I
Yeah,
think that stud fee is, let's say the puppy costs 2,000, the stud fee is about 2,000. Puppy costs 2,500, the stud fee is 2,500. So
yeah,
6,000 for emergency C-section, 2,000 for stud fee. Um, you have to have the cost of whelping supplies. You have to have bottles because you litter maybe 12 puppies and the mother can only feed 9. And you have to rotate puppies on and off the breast with bottle feeding them around the clock, every 2 hours, night or day. I went without sleep for 3 weeks in multiple litters. And I think people who just see an 8-week-old puppy, oh, it's cute, beautiful, 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 and they just bargain for price. They don't know what it took to get to that point. They don't know how many sleepless nights were involved, and they don't know what was involved in giving them that puppy at that point of time. Can you share your experiences in terms of caring for puppies and all the costs involved?
sleep becomes a currency. So if you will do
I
anything,
can attest. I can attest to that.
you will do anything to sleep.